This program is brought to you by LBC TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from LBC TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Britain's Prime Minister Tony Blair warned that his country will take increasingly tougher decisions against Tehran if detained British sailors are not quickly released. However, Blair said that the door is still open for a diplomatic solution to the sailor crisis. On March 23, 2007, 15 British sailors were seized by Iranian forces after they trespassed into Iran's territorial waters. Meanwhile, Iran's national security advisor Ali Larijani said that talks have indeed started between his country and Britain to resolve the sailor crisis.
It seems that the crisis between Britain and Iran over the 15 detained British sailors and naval personnel has come closer than ever to being resolved. British Prime Minister Tony Blair said that the door is still open for a diplomatic solution to the crisis.
We hope very much that the Iranian government realizes that the best way to resolve the issue is through diplomatic means. The most important thing is to get back our people safe and sound.
Meanwhile, Iran's national security advisor Ali Larijani said that talks have indeed started between the two sides.
The British government has started diplomatic discussions with the Iranian Foreign Ministry to resolve the issue of the British naval personnel. If the British continue on this path, then conditions can change, and we will move towards ending this issue peacefully.
إذن العملية التفاوضية الدبلوماسية بدأت، وربما كان إلغاء المؤتمر الصحفي الذي كان من المقرر أن يعقده الرئيس محمود أحمدينجاد. Talks have started between Iran and Britain to end the crisis peacefully. Meanwhile, Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad cancelled a scheduled press conference pending the outcome of these talks. Amidst the sailor crisis, the Iranian nuclear program is back again in the spotlight. Tehran warned that it will produce nuclear fuel locally for its Bushehr nuclear facility if Russia continues to refuse to do so. Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State announced that her country was willing to hold bilateral talks with Iran if the latter halts its uranium enrichment. This news came despite the fact that the U.S. has repeatedly rejected to hold direct bilateral talks with Iran. Talks between Iran and Britain have started, and a diplomatic solution to the sailor crisis may have become imminent. However, this crisis brought back to memory some old and hidden controversial issues between Iran and the West. Some of the disputed issues include territorial water limits in the Gulf and the freedom of travel there. بينها حدود المياه الإقليمية في الخليج وآليات الحركة وحرية التنقل فيها. In recent days, there has been notable movement towards diplomacy in the standoff between Iran and Britain. It has been advanced one step further by Ali Larijani, who said yesterday that Tehran is not inclined to try the British sailors and that it prefers a diplomatic solution. London quickly responded to Larijani's statements, which were aired on the British Channel 4, by declaring its willingness to open diplomatic negotiations.
Of course, our priority is not to hold a trial unless Britain insists on not resolving the crisis diplomatically. Our priority is to solve the problem through proper diplomatic means because we do not want to complicate the matters more than they already are. There are two ways to end the crisis, either through diplomatic negotiations between Britain and Iran or the use of forceful language, as had been the intention of the other side.
والانفراج الذي لاحت بشائره من لندن The diffusion of tension that came about in London was translated on the ground in Iraq. The American forces released the second secretary in the Iranian embassy who'd been detained in Baghdad 2 months ago. Iranian television released the breaking news that the Iranian diplomat will return to Tehran today. Iranians, however, were not concerned about politics yesterday. According to a custom they'd inherited from their ancestors, Iranians must leave their homes to avoid being cursed. This unique custom had been celebrated on the last day of the Nowruz holiday during the era of the Persian Empire. Our reporter Ahmed Al-Bahrani presents the following report.
من المؤكد أن الهدوء الذي تلاحظونه في شوارع طهران ليس وليد هجوم عسكري شنه الغرب.
The calmness that you notice in the streets of Tehran was not the result of a Western military attack on Iran or the result of an earthquake, something the Iranians have always feared. Rather, the occasion is the Sizhabadar holiday, during which one must leave home and spend the day in forests and gardens. Today, Iranians celebrate the 13th day of the Nowruz, which was renamed the holiday of nature after the Islamic Revolution. Iranians spend the day outdoors in groups, not only because they love to, but also because they fear being cursed should they remain at home.
هذا اليوم حسب ثقافة الفارسية القديمة.
We leave our homes because we do not want to be cursed. We also leave a holiday plant in the gardens.
During this holiday, Iranians were preoccupied as much with the curse of number 13 as with the crisis of the 15 British sailors and the nuclear issue.
We do not care about the threat of the US or Britain or any other country. The Iranian people will continue celebrating.
Concerns that the recent events may have negative consequences on Iran have, to a little extent, affected the festive atmosphere of Sizhabadar holiday. Nevertheless, Iranians did not waste the opportunity to celebrate and wish their nation peace and security. Iran's customs are unique and interesting, just like its political positions.
وصلت رئيسة مجلس النواب الأمريكي نانسي بيلوسي إلى دمشق.
The U.S. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, arrived in Damascus in the first high-level visit to the country in years. The visit will last for 2 days, during which she will meet with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to discuss a number of issues, most importantly the International Tribunal to try the suspects in the assassination of the late Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri, in addition to Syria's role in supporting Hezbollah and the Hamas movement. Pelosi's talks in Damascus will also address Syria's possible role in Iraq. On the issue of terrorism, Washington accuses Damascus of turning a blind eye to non-Iraqi fighters who are infiltrating Iraq through the Syrian borders. For his part, U.S. President George Bush said that the Democratic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's visit to Syria sends a mixed message that undermines efforts to isolate Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
Clear to high-ranking officials.
We have made it clear to high-ranking officials, whether they be Republicans or Democrats, that going to Syria sends mixed signals. Signals in the region and, of course, mixed signals to President Assad. And by that I mean photo opportunities and/or meetings with President Assad lead the Assad government to believe they're part of the mainstream of the international community.
During the past decade, Syrian-American relations have peaked and ebbed. The following report summarizes the highlights.
Syrian-U.S. relations were at their best when Damascus joined the international coalition, which liberated Kuwait after the Iraqi invasion in 1991. Relations between the two reached their peak during the year 2000, when there were intense diplomatic meetings in Damascus and Geneva between former U.S. President Bill Clinton and the Syrian President Hafez al-Assad, the father. This honeymoon, if this is the correct expression, did not last very long. The situation in Lebanon and Syria's interference in the country heavily affected the path of these relations. On September 2, 2004, Syria ignored UN Security Council Resolution 1559, which called on it not to interfere in Lebanese affairs by extending Lebanese President Emil Lahoud's term in office. This was the first seed of tensions with Washington. This was accompanied by the escalation in violence in Iraq. Washington held Damascus responsible for facilitating the movement of armed men and explosives through its borders into Iraq. However, Syria continues to deny such accusations. Then in 2005, the relationship between the two countries was dealt a setback when former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri was assassinated. The United States decided to withdraw its ambassador from Syria in February that year. In 2006, the U.S. resumed unofficial communications with Damascus, with visits to Syria by U.S. congressmen and others. Last month, representatives of foreign ministers met in Baghdad to discuss the Iraqi situation with the attendance of Syria, Iran, and the United States for the first time. Last week, Damascus welcomed an American congressional delegation that met the Syrian president. These days, Syria seems to be saying that whether you like Syria or not, it must protect its national and security interests, and it will make all efforts to improve its relationship with the only superpower in the world today, even if such efforts are merely symbolic.
أمين أبو يحيى العربية.
Another international heavyweight left Beirut yesterday. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, last leg of her regional tour, took her to Lebanon. At the end of her one-day visit, Merkel pledged more support to the Lebanese security forces and the establishment of the UN-backed court to try the suspects in former Premier Rafiq Hariri's murder and other political attacks. The Chancellor called on Syria to cooperate fully with the UN investigation. Follow this report. As she wound up a regional tour in Beirut yesterday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel urged Syria to prevent arms smuggling across its border into Lebanon and set up diplomatic ties with its neighbor. Speaking at a joint news conference with Prime Minister Fuad Sannura, the current EU president, who excluded Syria from her Middle East tour, also called for Damascus to cooperate fully with the UN probe into the 2005 assassination of former Premier Rafiq al-Hariri. Merkel said that there was no excuse for the International Tribunal, which the UN Security Council has proposed to try suspects in the Hariri murder, not to be established. She stressed it was important for the stability of Lebanon. She reiterated her country's full support of the Sannura government. Detailing her country's contribution to Lebanon since the summer 2006 war with Israel, Merkel said Germany has helped train Lebanese police and custom inspectors to improve border security, but stressed the need for other EU countries to help in this vein. In his meeting with Merkel, Sannura stressed the essential European role in ensuring peaceful and sustainable solutions to the problems in Lebanon and the region. He also reiterated his demand for a complete ceasefire with Israel and the full implementation of UN Resolution 1701. Sannura stressed on the need to liberate the Shebaa farms upon the completion of work being done by UN cartographers in accordance with his 7-point plan and to put the farms under UN custodianship. Merkel, whose country is now the president of the European Union for 6 months, has been touring the Middle East to push for peace with Israel after an Arab summit last week revived an Arab peace initiative with Israel. Sannura stressed the principle of land for peace is the only solution to guarantee security in the region.
The basis for the Arab peace initiative is something that has been already built up over a long period of time, since the Madrid conference. And that was really based on the very principle of land for peace. And this is something that Israel has to understand clearly, that after trying all ways and means and so on, so that it can guarantee peace and security for itself.
Following the talks with Sannura, Merkel met with Defense Minister Ilyas Mour, and after the Sarai, the Chancellor headed to IRINN, where she met with House Speaker Nabih Berri as part of efforts to heal the deep political crisis since the resignation of 6 opposition ministers from the government in November. Merkel said both leaders discussed the importance of the International Tribunal for Peace and Security in Lebanon and the need to fully implement UN Security Council Resolution 1701. she did not meet with President Milahoud, who is boycotted by the European Union. After her meeting with Birrim, Merkel returned to the Sarai, where she separately held talks with MP Walid Jumblat and former President Amin Gemayel before holding the joint press conference. The German Chancellor's one-day marathon then took her to the Beirut harbor, where she visited German Navy ships, which are taking part in the UNIFIL peacekeeping force. From the Beirut port, Merkel took a short ride to Martyr Square, where she visited the final resting place of slain Premier Rafi al-Hariri. She met head of the future bloc in parliament, MP Saad Hariri. The Chancellor, accompanied by the delegation that is traveling with her, laid a wreath on the late Premier's grave. Meeting Merkel alongside Hariri were Deputy House Speaker Farid Makari and former MP Ghattas Khouri. Prince Philip, hired to the throne of Belgium, is expected in Lebanon for a two-day visit on April 19th. During his trip, he will visit the Belgian contingent of the UNIFIL force. Prince Philip will also pay homage to the 3 blue helmet soldiers who were killed last month in a roadside crash, and will be accompanied by the families of these soldiers, as well as Defense Minister André Flau. The UNIFIL's Benjol contingent, which numbers 370 soldiers, is based in the southern village of Tibnin.
The new Kuwaiti Minister of Education, Nouria Subih, refused to wear the hijab during her swearing-in ceremony today. This provoked protests from many Islamist members of the parliament. This report has the details.
أدت الكويتية نورية الصبيح اليمين الدستورية بصفتها وزيرة للتربية والتعليم.
The new Kuwaiti Education Minister, Nouria Subih, was sworn into the new Kuwaiti government without wearing the hijab, despite protests from Islamist parliament members who demanded that she be prohibited from being sworn in if she did not wear the hijab. However, the Speaker of the Parliament, Jassim Al-Khurafi, repeatedly intervened to quiet the protesting members and let matters take their natural course. Subih is the second woman in the new Kuwaiti government. She is liberal-minded but has no political affiliations. The other female minister who wears the hijab is Dr. Masoom Al-Mubarak, the Minister of Health. She belongs to the Shiite party. The Islamist members listened to Subih as she was sworn in. The Islamists were of two opinions. Some believed that she was violating Islamic law, while others said that the constitution does not require that Subih wears the hijab.
The law talks about maintaining Islamic principles during the election process. Our brothers understand this to mean that when the law applies to the election process, it also applies to those who are members of parliament, even if they are appointed by the government. They must adhere to Islamic law. Therefore, the Islamic hijab also applies to appointed ministers.
The president of the Kuwaiti government, Sheikh Nasser al-Muhammad al-Sabbah, tried to calm the storm that was created by Minister Subih in the first session of his government. He called for transparency and honesty in order to achieve success and reforms.
The time has come to stand united on the solid ground of mutual understanding and political awareness of the critical stages and implied threats and challenges to our homeland, the region and the world.
The parliament passed a number of bills that had been stalled in the parliament for years, indicating that the Subih issue had not affected the legislative and executive branches.
اليوم ولله الحمد استطعنا أن ننهي هذه
Thank God today we were able to complete these reforms. God willing, we hope to benefit from these reforms, increase coordination and not waste time.
فيما يتعلق بموضوع عدم هدر الوقت.
اقتصرت قضية الحجاب للوزير الصبيح.
The hijab issue of Minister Subih was ultimately settled through debates and loud protests in the parliament. However, through these protests, the Kuwaiti opposition has proven its presence in the parliament by consistently holding the government accountable. There was a spirit of responsiveness and optimism between the legislative and executive branches in the first session of the new Kuwaiti government. This was reflected positively in the Kuwaiti public, which hopes for increased reforms and success.
الحياة LBC الكويت.
Police today remain on high alert for the Passover holiday, with heavy reinforcements in place throughout the week. Security sources say that there have been approximately 70, mainly general warnings of terror attacks. According to police officials, the heaviest presence of security forces are in public places, including synagogues, shopping centers, hotels, supermarkets, and on public transportation. Border police are heavily deployed along the Green Line, separating Israel from the West Bank. Palestinian terrorists fired a Qassam rocket at Israel this morning, which landed in an open area in the western Negev. No injuries or damage were caused. Referring to the ongoing Palestinian rocket fire, Defense Minister Mir Peretz yesterday told reporters that Israel will not allow the continued strengthening and arming of terrorists in Gaza. Speaking from an army base while on a tour of the South, the Minister of Defense stressed that the Army has full authority to hit missile launching squads before, during, and after attempts to fire Qassams into Israel.
According to social scientists, the terrorist operations in Iraq have impacted children the most. These attacks have psychologically impacted the children and have left them with other negative effects.
Terrorism has stolen the joy of childhood from Iraqi children and left them with tears. The oldest of these 5 children is 14 years old, and the youngest is only 2 years and 2 months of age. Terrorists had killed their parents in front of their eyes. The oldest sister, who now has to take on the role of the father and mother, tells us the sad story that began after her mother, brothers, and sisters fled from Baghdad to Karbala.
My father was killed while he was driving a taxi. My mother used to work at the school. One day my mom started yelling, "The terrorists are coming, the terrorists are coming." They dragged her and we could not do anything. They hit her in the head. Look at me now, I do not know what to do. I stayed up all night. I just do not know what to do. I have 5 brothers and sisters and I'm the oldest.
This little child did not know that his mother was breastfeeding him while she was dying. He kept feeding on his mother's milk even after she had died.
While my mother was lying down, my youngest brother told her, "Mom, sit up. Mom, sit up." So she sat up and she started breastfeeding.
This child is recounting the story of his mother's death. Her pleas for help are mixed with tears. Her siblings like to call her their second mother because she provides them with care, but they all are awaiting an unknown future.
While we were sitting at home, my sister came inside and told us they had killed my mom. When we went out, we saw her lying down in the street.
We fled to Karbala. We don't even have a home. I asked Maliki to find us a solution. What about our situation? What are we going to do? Where are we going to stay?
These children are hoping that someone will feel sympathetic about their situation and help them out. They are now living without a shelter and they do not have a provider. They only have God and good doers.
من كربلاء المقدسة علي حسين حمزة العراقية.
Tuesday, a Tehran delegation with First Vice President Parviz Dawoodi and head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization Reza Aghazadeh jointly opening new installations there. Cooling systems, a 400 kilovolt power generation substation and a water purification system were among facilities inaugurated today. Prior to the opening ceremony, Dawoodi told reporters illegitimate acts on the ground failed to deny Tehran its unquestionable right to peaceful nuclear technology. On Security Council stances on Iran's nuclear work, he said the enemy is stage managing psychological warfare, something which will face an utter failure by public awareness of the Iranian nation. And following the opening of Bushehr power plant support facilities, IAEO chief Reza Aghazadeh told reporters the powerhouse will face no problem if the required fuel, which was due in March, is injected into the facility in the current month. He further said the Russian side has promised to try hard to make good on its commitments and bring on stream the power plant as planned. Aghazadeh continued the two sides need to overcome a media ballyhoo which is currently around the corner corner and has no other reason but lack of political will to act according to schedule. Aghazadeh concluded construction of Bushehr nuclear power plant symbolizes close cooperation between Iran and Russia, adding failure to complete the facility will tarnish Moscow's image in Iran and to a larger extent on international stage. An Italian lawyer on Saddam's defense team has revealed new evidence on crimes at the hands of the former Iraqi dictator against Iranians. Giovanni De Stefano said in an exclusive interview with IRIB, Britain is one of the most active European countries that export the chemical weaponry to Saddam's Iraq in its imposed war against Iran in the 1980s. The Italian defense lawyer also blasted British companies and some European banks for financial and military support they lent to Iraq as it provided the then Iraqi strongman with thousands of kilograms of mustard gas and other lethal chemicals. He went on to say disclosed and still hard evidence shows that some European countries and their main ally, the U.S., are the main perpetrators behind chemical attacks against Iranians and Iraqi Kurds. One of the Iranian diplomats who was released from detention by the U.S. forces in Iraq on Monday arrived in Tehran today and was welcomed by Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki and a number of senior officials. Jalal Sharafi, the second secretary of Iran's embassy in Iraq, was kidnapped in Baghdad by American occupation forces in January. Another 5 Iranian diplomats who were kidnapped by U.S. forces in the northern Iraqi city of Arbil are still held captive there. And security officials on Kish Island in southern Iran have denied reports that a former FBI agent has gone missing there. There are different web postings which allege a U.S. citizen has gone missing on the island. The person in question is said to be an ex-FBI officer traveling to Kish Island on business. He has been unheard of for nearly a month, the website's claim, quoting the American Washington Post daily. And the International Monetary Fund has announced Iran will earn $58 billion in oil revenues in the year to March 2008. The IMF report bases its statistics on an estimation that Iran exports its crude on a $55.9 per barrel basis. It also says Iran's daily crude production is projected to stage a rise in the current year, hitting the 4.2 million barrel mark on a daily basis, up from 4.1 million on the year-ago period. And the Central Bank of Iran says the country's foreign assets have registered a 25.2% spike in the year to December 2006, standing at about $100 billion in foreign exchange.
دروغ اول آوریل از دید کاریکاتوریست روزنامه قطری الوطن.
April Fool's Day caricature. This cartoon appeared in Al-Watan newspaper. It portrays liberty in the eyes of the United States. The lie of April, or April Fool's Day, has replaced the torch of liberty in America. The claim of democracy and liberty is nothing but a sheer lie.
ادعای هواداری آمریکا از دموکراسی دروغ محض است. در کاریکاتور دوم الوطن نماد آمریکا در ننوی لم داده است که
In the second caricature, America is swinging between two trees. The two trees symbolize occupied Iraq and Afghanistan. The United States pretends to be resting safely, but it does not realize that the fruits of these two trees are the bombs which are ready to fall and explode on its head. The United States is stuck between the Iraqi quagmire and Afghanistan while pretending that it is in a safe and secure region.
که تصور می‌کرد جای امنی یافته است.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.